spaghetti dinner is currently 11:40. Alright, heading over to the bus stop. It's currently 5:40. A little bit nervous. We're at the start line now.
That being said, welcome everyone to the 40-day Global Marathon.
Heading to my crowd now. So up until now, I've ran about 7 marathons, and about 4 out of those 7 marathons, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I didn't eat right, I didn't feel right, I refused to take gels during races, I didn't really follow a structured plan, and I just ran as a form of my training. In the races where I did follow a more structured plan, it didn't really turn out to be the way I had planned for. As for those who run marathons know that marathons are unpredictable, anything can happen, and so some of those times where I did follow a structured plan, like the CIM and LA Marathon, things didn't work out, especially from a fueling and nutrition side of things.
Have to use the restroom.
I was disappointed both times on the courses of CIM and LA Marathon because I thought both times it didn't quite reflect what my efforts were during the training blocks, and it didn't really reflect my fitness at the time. And so being so attached to a certain time kind of brought me down to a disappointed feeling. And so I wouldn't call those races a failure in a sense, but I did learn something out of it for both of those races, and I learned more about racing, learned more about my body and what I should do, and take that into account for the next race, which was Grandma's this time. And so coming out of those 2 marathons, the CIM and 2024 LA Marathon, I learned a lot. I came into this Grandma's Marathon quite prepared, was a lot more focused on my nutrition and taking into what I learned from those races. And I even had, I'll say, these 2 marathon training blocks kind of stacked on top of each other. And so taking all those into account, I think that I was now prepared to pretty much run the best race I'd say was one of my best races that I've ever performed at a marathon. So, and that was at the Grandma's Marathon in 2024. We're here at the gate. Our flight boards in about 30 minutes to Minneapolis. So we were flying in from Calgary, from Canada, coming off a Banff National Park trip where Aaron, Justin, and Sarah and I went to Banff. Justin and Aaron and I also ran a half marathon at the Banff National Parks, so that was a lot of fun. So we were flying in from Calgary into Minnesota, Minneapolis, and it was quite a hectic day for us. A lot of things happened at the airport. Had some issues with the ticket where things didn't turn out, and I had to be flexible in many ways, and we ended up landing in Minneapolis at nighttime, and we were able to pick up our rental car relatively smoothly and head towards Duluth, where Grandma's Marathon and the University of Minnesota Duluth were kind of collaborating together, where they would open up apartments and dormitories for the runners participating in the marathon or half marathon. And so my brother and I took that option and we booked an apartment, and I would want to say that the apartments definitely brought me back to the days of college. It gave me a nice nostalgic feeling.
Hello.
And it was, I guess, very reminiscent of my times in college, and it brought me back to the days. Definitely a different vibe. I'd say that the bedding wasn't as comfortable, but surprisingly enough, I actually had one of the best sleeps I had the days before a marathon. Usually the days before marathon, I don't get much sleep, but this time around, I actually got sleep. I actually got some solid REM sleep, and Minnesota doesn't get dark until, I want to say, 9 p.m. or so. And so even with that lighting, with the bedding, I ironically got probably one of the best sleeps I've ever had prior to a marathon. So it worked out, and I enjoyed my time in that apartment. Than what I normally have before marathons. And if this is what gives me the BQ, I gotta start living like this. So the day before race day, we pretty much just woke up and headed towards the, I'll say, the official shakeout run for the Grandma's Marathon and Half Marathon. And this is where I met Dakota Lindworm, who is the one of the marathon Olympians for the women's side. It was great meeting her. She was really nice to me. She turned out to be a lot smaller than I thought. She's very lean. She looks really comfortable at easy paces, and so it was great meeting her, and I put in some miles there. Weather in general in Duluth during that time was, I want to say, very unpredictable. Days leading up to the race, I was very tied to my phone, always opening the weather app and just checking the weather. One day it would show thunderstorms, the next day it would show like just the overcast and no rain, and then again, the following day it would just show showers again. And so it was very, I guess, a roller coaster of reportings of weather. So I was, I tried not to let it bother me too much, but at the same time, I really hoped that weather turned out to be great. And you'll see later that weather was great, and I would say pretty much better than what I would ask for. And so it was great. The Grandma's Association, or Grandma's Marathon Organization, also said that they will be emailing out to the runners a notification at 3 a.m. of race day, just to let everyone know whether or not it is a go or no go for the marathon, because that's just how unpredictable the weather would be. But during the shakeout run, it looked to be a good sign. It wasn't raining, but at the same time, we were pretty much cruising during those times, and it was a great weather. I think the shakeout would turn out to be around a 5K, but after the 5K, Convention Center was just right there for the Expo to pick up our bibs, and so we went directly to pick up our bibs, and it went by smoothly. I thought the Convention Center was quite spacious. It was pretty big relative to other marathon expos that I've been at. It was indoor, a lot of shops, a lot of different gels that you could buy as well, and I bought this sweater there, and so I had a good time. It was very smooth. There was also a chip testing station where you just walk by and they check whether your bib chip is working. It's the first time I've seen that at a marathon, but I thought that was pretty neat. And they verified our chips were working, basically.
Oh, really? Oh, that'd be 19150. So good.
After the bib pickup, my brother and I then went to a relatively close by coffee shop to get our daily dose of coffee, and I also had some pastries as well. I was carving up the days leading up to this race. This time around, I was definitely more hyper-focused on what I was eating, and also being very calculative of the grams of carbs I was planning to eat. And my plan was basically 2 days out from the marathon, I would take about 10 grams of carbs per kilogram of weight, and that turned out to be around 600 grams a day of carbs for me. And since the marathon was held on a Saturday, I started doing that carb loading on a Thursday, and then I took that into Friday, ultimately leading to Saturday. And so This was on a Friday, and so we took our coffee, and also I had a croissant, and I ate that, and then afterwards we did, I'll say, the official lunch, which was a spaghetti dinner. Grandma's had a spaghetti all-you-can-eat dinner and lunch as well. They call it dinner, but you can buy a ticket for both lunch and dinner sessions, and so that's what we did. Spaghetti dinner.
And lunch and dinner.
And so we went back to the convention center where this lunch of spaghetti was held, and I had more carbs, and I pretty much had, I want to say, three or four plates in that lunch, and so I was really getting ready to take in all this carbs. You can't really go wrong with spaghetti, but I thought the spaghetti was great, and I had a lot of plates of it, and it was definitely filling for me. And I want to say I am a pretty big eater, and so I thought, you know, taking in 600 grams a day would be pretty easy for me, but at the end of the day, it turned out to be quite, I guess, gruesome for me, and I felt pretty gross. Floating out to be around 250 grams of carbs today so far. Almost at 300. 300 more left. I feel okay. I need to eat them. And usually during the training, whenever I felt this type of grossness after I eat, I usually perform quite well the next day on my runs, and so I guess this is a good sign for me. And so taking in 600 grams a day was a little bit hard, but at the same time, I wasn't exactly, you know, throwing up or anything like that. I just felt very bloated. I just felt very fueled up, and I just wanted to run and detox all that carbs out of me. And so I took that as a good sign. We're here at the spaghetti dinner. It's currently 11:40. First plate, spaghetti, Hawaiian bread, meatball salad. So, carving up. $18 per person.
How many rounds?
Lunch and dinner. So we'll be back for dinner too, maybe. We'll see.
How many rounds are you gonna eat?
Huh?
How many rounds are you gonna eat?
I'm thinking like 3 or 4 for lunch. I don't know. So this will be my race gear. I'll be rocking the Adidas Adizero singlet, the On Cloud hat, bib number 907. I'll also have a Nathan bottle filled with Powerade, which is similar to the fuel on the course. We got the Rabbit 5-inch running shorts, Saucony Endorphin Pro Elite race shoes, Darn Tough socks, my Garmin watch, as well as my Garmin heart rate monitor. Kind of a plethora of brands on me, but I love all of them. So come race day, I woke up around 3 a.m. or so to give myself enough time to go poo and also go pee. And I first took my bagel and peanut butter, and as well as a drink mix from Morton, which was 320 calories and around 75 grams of carbs. And so that morning I had pretty much almost 700 calories and 130 grams of carbs. And so it was a pretty big chunk of, I'll say, calories and grams of carbs I typically have. But I've tested this the week before at the Banff Half Marathon and everything was fine. And so I did the same approach here, and I didn't exactly feel like full or bloated or anything like that. I just felt normal. And so I took that as a good sign, and I took those foods and fuels in perfectly smoothly, and I proceeded to the start line. And my brother also had his half marathon, so I was able to walk him to his shuttle bus and drop him off first, and then head back and, you know, rest up a little bit more, get myself prepared, get dressed, and just get myself mentally prepared. And I even had a second poo during that time too, so I just wanted to make sure that all the, I'll say, goodness from my body gets kind of splurged out and nothing comes out during the race. And so that went well. The morning went well, and after dropping off my brother, I then went back to the apartment and waited for my shuttle bus to come as well. And so my time came and I walked to the shuttle bus, and the shuttle bus took us to the start line, which was I think around 30 minutes away. And so took that shuttle, hopped on that shuttle, and pretty much got to the starting line about 90 minutes prior to the actual start time of the marathon.
Under 1 hour away from the race. With that being said, we want to welcome everyone to the 48th Annual Marathon.
So because I got there pretty early, I had all the time in the world to use the porta potties, and that's what I did. I went number 1 there and was able to detox the Morton that I had drank earlier, and then pretty much just waited until the start of the race. It was around 50s to mid 50 degrees at the start line, and so a little bit chilly. There was an overcast as well, so pretty cloudy. So kind of cold, but at the same time I had my throw jacket on, so I didn't feel too cold, and I was just standing there waiting until the start of the race. And during the start of the race, there would be, there's a train right next to the start line, and it would honk when the race started, and it's actually really loud. At least for me, it was really loud. I guess the start of the race, it's fine. I think it's pretty neat that the honk is pretty much kind of the train honk, which is pretty loud. But it's a start line. It was a unique experience, and it gave me a little rattle, but at the same time, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But little did I know that I think the first 5K, the train would just travel with the runners, and then occasionally it would honk at that same loudness. And so it was very, I would say, distracting, but at the same time, it would startle me once in a while when it honks, and it was really loud. I didn't really like it, but it was only the first 5K. I was glad that it didn't actually stick with us the entire way.
Mile 0.
So my race strategy throughout the race is pretty much to start off conservatively in the first half, going around at 6:30 pace, or in the 6:30s pace, and then the second half I would dip into the 6:20s pace. My ultimate goal for this race was, I guess, A goal was definitely at sub 250. A B goal was, I would say, sub 254, and C goal I would say is a sub 3. And so I was definitely trying to go for that A goal, but at the same time didn't worry too much about time this time around, my main goal was to Boston qualify, and which was, I want to say it's around 254, sub 254. So I was targeting that time at the time. I didn't bring my GoPro this time. I had a little Go2 on my hat. I didn't want to bring the GoPro this time, just to try to free up my hands more, be as light as possible. I also had a soft flask handheld filled with Powerade, which is also the hydration that Grandma's Marathon was also using for the aid stations, and so I trained with that as well. And my plan was to use the soft flask until I drank it all. And once I drank it all, I would just throw out the soft flask.
It's 5K, 20:08.
But anyways, the race started, and my pace for the first 5Ks was actually in the 6:20s. And if you run marathons, you know that there is that adrenaline rush in the beginning. And even though I say that I'd start off conservatively, there's always that adrenaline and everyone else just running with you that kind of boosts you up to even faster than what you planned. And so that's what happened to me. I didn't think too much of it. I did notice that I was going in the 6:20s and the 6:30s, but I also noticed that my heart rate was still in the upper 150s. And throughout my training, the upper 150s was my lower end of my marathon pace. And my race strategy was to pretty much maintain that upper 150 for the first half. And then, well, I took it as a good sign. I would take the upper 150s in the first half as a good sign, making me think that I'm feeling good. And then the second half, I will allow myself to go into the lower 160s. And that was sort of the plan. And so when I saw my pace in the first 5K to be in the 6:20s, but at the same time, my heart rate was still in the upper 150s, I thought, okay, I can still maintain this pace. I felt pretty darn comfortable, and so I was like, okay, this is fine. I'll stick with it, and I moved forward.
Sub 40. There you go. Uh-oh. 10K. Sub 40.
And then next 5K, I want to say, got faster and finished the 10K mark at a sub 40-minute time, which was, I think, crazy. I remember crossing that 10K mark and thinking, oh, I just came in at a sub 40. And I remember just last year around, I think, September timeframe at the Santa Monica 10K Classic, I was pretty much gunning for that sub 40 10K in a 10K race. And so seeing me just comfortably hit that 10K mark in a marathon at a sub 40 pace was just kind of like mind-boggling to me. And I didn't even feel that bad. I felt comfortable. I felt, you know, in the zone, and I proceeded with that. And it was quite exciting to realize that, and that kind of gave me a little bit of a push more. And the next few miles, actually, my heart rate did go up past the 160, and so it was at that point I started to think, oh shoot, am I going too fast? Like, I shouldn't be in 160s now, as I was planning to get into the 160s in the second half of the race. And so I was able to tone it down a little bit. My pace still stayed relatively the same, and eventually my heart rate dipped back down to the upper 150s, where I was, again, very comfortable with
about 1 hour and 4 seconds.
And then around mile 8 or 9 or so, I actually started to feel a little bit of a pull or a little bit of tightness on my left quad. And so I thought, okay, this might be an issue. I don't know. At the time, I wasn't sure what it was. And if you run marathons, any abnormal or weird feeling that you don't really feel that is natural to your body is questioned. And so this was one of those feelings where there was this small tightness in my left quad, and I thought, oh shoot, maybe I am going too fast. I am a little bit, I guess, cautious about what I was feeling. And so I felt this pull, but I didn't think too much of it. It was just there. It wasn't very, I'll say, painful. It wasn't painful at all, actually, and it wasn't uncomfortable. It was just there. And so I kind of just ignored it and proceeded with the run. And it turned out to be, I want to say, just nothing. Maybe it was just in my mind, but at the same time, it was there. And I noticed it at mile 8 and 9.
122.
And then the next few miles up until the halfway point, pretty much, I guess I'll say a lot of the next few miles I thought was pretty much a blur. I was, I want to say, so in the zone or so focused on, I guess, my running that I really don't remember anything from that point on. I didn't even look at the scenery around me. I just knew Lake Superior was on my left, but I didn't visually look over to my left during that time. I was just, focused on running and making sure that no issues came up. And so one thing I noticed is that I would always try to find a runner to run with. I don't, go up to them and ask them, hey, can I share a few miles with you? I don't go to each one like that, but every time I see a runner that is running a relatively solid pace, I kind of just run with them for a bit. And sometimes they would drop me, sometimes I would drop them, but if that happens, no problem, on to the next runner. And so I did that for a few runners, and if you run marathons, you kind of develop this bond with them. Well, at least I do, maybe it's just me, but I sort of just develop a bond with them even though I haven't spoken a word with them throughout the entire race. And sometimes if you see them at the very end of the marathon, you just give a fist pump saying, hey, good job, as you kind of notice that, you've been seeing their back or you've been running with them the entire time that you develop this, I say, bond throughout the entire race without even speaking a word to each other. And so I find that very neat and something that I actually really enjoy about marathons as a nice cherry on top or nice bonus to all this torturous running that you do for 26.2 miles.
Halfway, 124.
I think got through the halfway point at around 1 hour and 24 minutes with some change on the side. And it was around that point that I drank all my hydration that I had in my handheld flask, and eventually I threw away that handheld flask. The weather, I'd say, was pretty humid. It didn't bother me too much, but I did notice that my body was sweating a little bit more, and having that handheld flask and drinking my Powerade did help a lot. It was humid, but at the same time, the temperature was relatively cool. It was in the mid 50s still, and there was this overcast, and rain actually started to trickle in a little bit. It wasn't too bothersome to me. It was more of a refresher. I thought it was like a light drizzle, and so weather was still great at the halfway point, and I proceeded on and clocked in at that 124 time.
140.
In the next few miles after the halfway mark, I did my, I'll say, body evaluations, mental body evaluations, because I knew it was around this time from the halfway point to around mile 18 is where I would get signs from my bowels that something was off. My legs were moving and my bowels might join it and start moving as well. And so I did that evaluation, evaluated my breathing, evaluated how I felt, evaluated my stomach, tried to receive any signals that could have probably been brought up. But ultimately I thought, okay, there's nothing out of the ordinary. I felt great, bowels were steady, nothing was moving there, just my legs. I felt great as well. My heart rate was still in the 150s, upper 150s. And my race strategy was to allow myself to go to 160s for the second half. But I guess my heart rate just didn't go up that high. I was still maintaining consistent 620 paces, and I thought, okay, I'll keep this pace for now, and I'll really turn on the gears at, I'll say, mile 20, where, you know, that's where the race starts, and that last 10K is something that I want to actually race hard and maybe potentially get into that threshold heart rate as well.
209.
It was at mile 20 where the rain actually started to kick in a little bit more, and the drizzle sort of became more of rain and a shower. And so when you're running, to me, it didn't really bother me, but when I look at videos and footages here and there, I know it actually did seem like it was raining a lot harder than I thought while running. I want to say it didn't bother me too much. My heart rate was still in the 150s at mile 20, and I wanted to, I guess, put down the hammer and start to race. And that's how I felt actually during the last 10K. I thought I was pushing myself, but my heart rate seemed to not go up to 160s, it stayed at the 150s. And I thought I was going a lot faster, but I was actually going around the 630s. But because at mile 20 to mile 22 and even to mile 23, everyone knows at mile 22 there is that lemon drop hill where it's a pretty, people call it steep hill that you have to go over, and that's where it was at mile 20. But to me, I already planned for this. I knew the hill was at mile 20, and I knew that my pace would slow down during that time, and so I allowed myself mentally to be okay with going at, you know, 650 pace up that hill and maybe even in the low 7s, as long as I kept my heart rate under control, because I did not want to hit that wall or have that wall kind of just slam in my face after that bridge. And so I did not want that to happen, and so I planned for this mentally and prepared myself to go at a slower pace up that hill. And to me, I thought the hill wasn't too bad. I just went up it. I did notice a few runners starting to walk from mile 20s to the end, so I was passing, I want to say, quite a number of runners. I think from mile 23 into the finish, I actually passed around like 11 or 15 runners, which was great. as you know, sad as it sounds, I felt proud of myself as I kept passing people. I thought, okay, my fitness is so good, I'm just passing people, like I planned this right and all that. So I had that proud feeling, and so it was great that I was passing people. But I guess during that mile 20 to 23, my pace did slow down to about a 630 pace because of, I want to say because of the hills, but at the same time I allowed myself to go at that pace. And then afterwards, rain started to pour even more, and from mile 23 until the end, I kind of like sped up even more. And again, I thought I was speeding up, but my pace was actually still in the 620s. So my heart rate is also in the 150s, so everything kind of felt like perceived threshold for me, but I was actually just maintaining that same pace that I've kind of gone through the entire marathon. And so that was kind of the mile 20 to mile 23 and a little bit past 23 to 25. And so that was how it was. And then at the very last, I'll say 800 or 400 meters, I put in that last kick at the very end. And I remember turning a corner of the race course, seeing that finish line, seeing that timer read 2:49:20. And so I was around like 400, I want to say around 400 meter, was it 400? It might be a bit less, 200 meters or so away from the finish line. I thought, okay, I got to sprint. I guess the click for me to actually think that I am going to finish in sub 250 happened around after Lemon Drop Hill, when I started passing people. It was around, I want to say mile 24, where we entered kind of the city of Duluth, and I realized, okay, I might actually do it. 250, sub 250, here I come. And I wanted to go faster. I think I could have gone faster, but at the same time, that lingering thought of, I don't want to cramp, I don't want to cramp, because the moment I do cramp, it's game over. Or it's not game over, but that 250 pretty much goes out the window. That's how I'll say close I was. And so I told myself, okay, just come to a compromise. Come to a point where you're running fast, you're pushing yourself, but at the same time, you are not pushing your muscles to a point that you start to get signals that a cramp is coming. And so that's what I did. I didn't, go all out that last 2 miles. I stayed at that comfortable fast pace in order for myself to ensure that I am on 250 pace. And so after, turning that corner and seeing that time, that's when I thought, okay, forget about the pictures, forget about your running form, forget about how you look, especially in the rain. So I was like drenched. I was like, my form was starting to break apart. I was like, just put into your last kick, run as fast as you can, ensure you get that 250. Even if the clock does not exactly, even if the clock gives you sufficient time to give you that time to run to the finish line, even though you're pretty sure, who cares, just run as fast as you can. Because I did not want any room for error, and so I was like, okay, just put in your last spurt and run as hard as you can. And I put my last kick in, and I was able to finish in a 250 time, officially clocking in at a 2:49:22.
Alvin Law, way to go. Simon Al Machette from New York City.
Alvin! Yeah! Woo! Yeah, let's get it! Let's go to Boston! Good job, how do you feel? How's execution? How'd you execute?
What?
How'd you execute?
I just went by feel.
I went out strong.
I kept up the pace until even halfway, so maintained 620 something.
Okay, what was the official, or like what was the clock time?
Under 250.
Under 250? Yeah, let's get it!
And then after crossing that finish line, it didn't really dawn on me or didn't really hit me until I guess I saw my brother and he yelled out my name. Pretty much when I crossed the finish line, I was kind of in awe, or I was kind of lost for words, and I was just thinking in my head, did I just do it? Did I just sub 250? Did I just Boston qualify? And everything was kind of like circulating in my head, like there's no way that I just did, right? This is crazy. And so my brother finally, as I was walking, my brother finally, he saw me and called out my name, Alvin. And then that's when, everything came to me, like I did it. right? I did it, I Boston qualified, I put in all this work, and I was able to finally achieve what I had been training for I'd say for almost half a year. So that moment was probably one of the happiest moments I felt in racing. Seeing my brother there as well, cheering me on, I just threw up my hand. I was like, yeah, I was just so happy that I was able to finally achieve what I've been training for and had the race of my lifetime. And so it feels nice when results show at the end of the day. Even though the past 2 marathons, results didn't show, I still grew as a runner. And I thought this time around I was able to perform, I was able to run my heart out, and it showed. And I was very happy to see that. As happy as I was, it was quite short-lived, that moment, because it was, like I said before, it was raining, it was cold, and so my body was also cooling down, and I was just so tired, and so all that kind of compiled up, and I was like, okay, this is getting cold. And I started to shiver, and they gave us space blankets as well, but I just wanted to get out of there. No post-race like celebrations or like that. And me and my brother both agreed, because he just finished his half marathon as well, we both agreed that that was probably the worst feeling or worst travel from our finish line to the shuttle back to our apartment adventure that we went to. It was just so gruesome, just so cold and wet that we were just like, okay, let's just get out of here. And we slowly walked over to the shuttle bus, which was quite far. We had to go through some terrain. We had to walk over this small bridge over the course of the runners that were going under. And it wasn't the most safe, I would say, because it was pretty slippery as well. And after running a marathon, you're tired, you're weak, and going up the stairs, crossing it, going down the stairs is quite dangerous. And I thought that was quite gruesome or quite tiring and quite scary at the same time, but it had to be done. And we finally arrived at the shuttle, all drenched. The shuttle was nice and heated, and so we were able to sit there and heat up a little bit before the shuttle took off, because the shuttle was waiting for more runners to complete before it took off back to the apartment. And it didn't end there, actually. Once we got dropped off it was only near our apartment, so we still had to walk like half a mile to our apartment and actually, finally get into our apartment and shower up and all that. So it was another 0.5 miles in the cold rain for us to walk sadly over and slowly walk like zombies. And it was just us two too, so it was quite, I guess, treacherous for us, but at the same time, it was an experience, and it was fun, especially spending it with my brother. It was nice, and so despite how bad as it sounds, I still ultimately thought that it was a positive experience. It's something that will be memorable.
Currently 8:45, we're checking out from this lovely college life, graduating to Boston.
But after all things settled, I am now back here at home in the scorching heat, and I was able to really process and rethink the racing that I did at Grandma's Marathon. And I am ultimately very happy about the way I performed. I definitely would give myself an exceed expectation for myself. Like I said before, my A goal was a 250. My expected goal was a sub 254, and my C goal was to PR and at least get a sub 3. And so I did not expect myself to actually go sub 250. I definitely was training at paces like that throughout that whole training block I had for Grandma's. And so, but I sort of did, account for any mishaps that could potentially occur on race day that could cause me to go into the sub or the low 250s. And so I would always account for that. And so performing the way I did at Grandma's and going sub 250 exceeded my expectations. And I guess a common question that I've been getting these past few days is that what, I guess, training was different from Grandma's Marathon from the CIM and LA Marathon. And to be honest, I think there was no big difference between, I would say, LA Marathon and Grandma's Marathon. My mileage I did kind of lower my mileage for Grandma's. LA's peak week was around 90 miles, and then Grandma's was only in the low 80s, 83 miles. And so same workouts though, same threshold workouts, same VO2 workouts, same long run workouts. And Grandma's was also just, training paces were just a lot faster. LA, my training paces was around the 640s, 630s, and then Grandma's, my marathon pace training was usually around the 620s and 630s. And so with that, I kind of, used the same training workouts and put that in for Grandma's. And I think there was not much I could say from a training perspective, but I know for a fact that ultimately it was the racing that kind of changed the way the results show. Grandma's, I was a lot more hyper-focused on what I was eating throughout the days before leading up to race day, whereas for LA Marathon, I wasn't really nitpicky about what I was eating the days leading up to the marathon, which led to my GI issues. And that's what I learned and gained from that marathon as well as CIM. And this time around, I applied that knowledge, applied that learning to Grandma's Marathon and properly ate, properly fueled up, and everything went smoothly and was able to finally, I guess, reflect my fitness in a race. And I guess even if I failed this time around, I definitely, would get a little bit disappointed, but at the same time, I think it's the same outcome or same feedback that I would give myself for LA Marathon as well. I would say, grew as a runner, and I think that is the ultimate goal. I think if I, did not grow as a runner in any way, I think that would probably put me down as even more than not achieving that time. Everything just kind of aligned this time around in Grandma's Marathon, and everything was actually going smoothly, and the results ultimately did show, and finally, no failures in time actually happened, and I was able to achieve my goal of going sub 250 and sub 3 hours, I guess, and then also Boston qualifying. I think it's moments like this where failures like CIM, quote unquote failures like CIM and LA Marathon was more of a stepping stones for me to grow as a runner and achieve my goals in Grandma's Marathon. And like I said before, if I were to fail Grandma's Marathon, this would just be another stepping stone for my next race. And even if I succeeded at Grandma's Marathon like this time around, it's still a stepping stone for my next marathon. And so I will continuously want to grow as a runner, and these races ultimately give me that experience, give me that fun, and I really enjoy running from that aspect of things. And I will continue to train. It's been 2 weeks now, and I've been taking a break, and so my next run will be fun. It's something different, something not on the roads. It will be at a 100K race on the dirt trails, and so I look forward to that. So I will be starting that training soon. But to me, that's just another way of growing myself as a runner, which is my ultimate goal. And I'm really happy the way I performed at Grandma's Marathon. And thank you for, I guess, everyone that has been supporting me, coming up to me at Grandma's Marathon, saying hi and thanking me for what I do. But I also really thank you guys as well. And I definitely don't deserve it, but happy that you guys are getting something out of these videos. And I look to make more videos and make more running adventure videos for you guys, and hopefully continue to grow as a runner. And hopefully you guys do too.